It all begins with a beautiful girl named Nishino who is sleeping and wakes up with the alarm going off as it seems she had overslept. She wakes up dazed from a pretty horrible dream and takes a shower. She gets ready and opens the door, but upon opening it she has another flashback of some paparazzi people taking shots of her and nearly has a breakdown until her personal driver shouts out her name. And asking if she's all okay, she gets herself together and the driver takes her to school. When Nisho arrives, all the other students look at her in awe and wants to be friends with her as she pretty much the most perfect schoolgirl, beautiful, smart, and is a former actress and idol, so everyone looks up to her and treats her like a celebrity. When she's being greeted by all the other students, she gets closer to the lockers and spots the only person she absolutely despises. His name is Minoru Kajino, who happens to be our main protagonist. He has a pretty mediocre personality, and he's the only one who doesn't care about Nishino and seems to always forget her name, but she hopes that one day he will remember it just like the rest of the world. She always tries to make an effort with him to see if his perspective will change one day, and as she approaches him this time she greets him and he greets her back, but he calls her Nishimura, making Nishino freeze on the spot with a sarcastic happy face and is furious with his response. But not only does she get upset about him getting the name wrong, the most frustrating part is that unlike everybody else, when Nino is in his presence he almost acts like there's nobody even there, and this annoys the hell out of her as this experience is so different to what she's normally used to. Even when they lock eyes it never feels right, and almost as if Kajino was looking directly past her, and that is when her hatred toward him was complete. After correcting her name to him for the 100th time, he responds mumbling under his breath, calling her an NPC. She gets confused and asks him what he means by NPC, and afterwards Kajino apologizes, saying that he creates his own main characters inside his head along with others which he labels as NPCs, which are basically unimportant people in his life, and that she just happens to be an NPC to him. Nishino doesn't know what to say back to this, but he tries correcting her name again, but he said it in another funny way, which is still completely wrong still. So after they just go to class, one in class, the other students are fascinated by Nishino and ask her many questions about getting back into the showbiz, as she is set to return to her acting career very soon. Next Monday night, airing in a very popular show, she explains to us how after a recent scandal in middle school she had to quit acting for some time after all the hate towards her, and ever since the day she's had to hide behind the mask, hiding away until it was all resolved finally. During high school she is back to being herself again. Nishino always plays the part of being the teacher's pet just to be the favorite of the class, and also plays the part of being the popular girl just so everyone will like her and have zero enemies just to make up for what happened back then. She also sticks around after classes just to help the teacher with some prep work for the next day and stays there at a pretty late time too. But after school her personal driver had been beaten up by some thugs, so she begins to walk home alone instead, as he was nowhere to be seen. On her way home, the same thugs that took out the driver had been following her, and this is where they take her for ransom, adding that her father will need to pay a huge fee for her release. But while being taken by the thugs she can see someone watching in the distance, but doesn't know who this is as it's too dark, and doesn't get a good enough look before they cover up her face. But the anime shows the audience that the mysterious figure is in fact Kago. After waking up in the warehouse, Nishino is scared and frightened as they discuss what they will do to her if her father doesn't pay the money. Kino is waiting outside and uses a mirror to see the reflection of what's happening inside the warehouse, and after analyzing the building he then changes into his secret identity before going inside. The thugs note that this is her second time being taken, and the first was some obsessive stalker, but this time it will be the enemies of her father, and one of them wants to have some fun with her. But just before he acts, Kino breaks the glass of the roof and reveals himself as a stylish ruffian slayer. One of the guys thinks it's some kind of joke and pulls out his gun, but Kajino knocks it out of his hand within a split millisecond, shocking them all. After Kajino mocks the thug, saying he's got no movement skills, and then finishes him off insanely fast. The other man notices how Kino isn't an ordinary fighter and adds that he's also an ex-military man, so he's been waiting for such a challenge for a long time. He pulls out a knife and tries attacking Kajino, getting a few hits on him. However, it's nothing that Kajino isn't ed to, and right after he pulls out his favorite weapons, which are crowbars, he warns the man that crowbars might be the best street weapon to have, as they're light, sturdy, and incredible versatile, and something he can use as nunchucks. And they also have the end of something like a golf club, not to mention the sharp blades at the end the big guy has. more overall body power, so he tries to crush Kajino, but while fighting Kino warns him that he was also the man given the name the Balaclava Berserker, as someone has been going around fighting all the biker gangs and their signature weapon was the crowbar. The man realizes he is the Balaclava Berserker and realizes that this is the guy who made all the bikers start wearing helmets. Kino proceeds and breaks the guy's legs and beats him up, freeing Akane Nishino, but right after he sets her free he disappeared in an instant. After a few hours, Nishino's father arrives, and using his connections he managed to hide this incident from going public, so Nishino was able to continue her acting career without any problems. However, her biggest regret was not finding out the true identity of the Style Ruffian and Slayer. The next day at school, Nishino arrives and once again she greets Kino, hoping he will remember her name, and this time he calls her by her actual name, shocking Nishino. This time Keijo locks directly into her eyes, but it felt right this time, like she was actually there, and she comes to realize that Kajino is a lot like herself, hiding behind the mask. Well, that's what she concludes. However, she can't even ask him anymore, as the next morning Kino was on the news. Kino was found dead near the city road as he was hit by truck hunt and didn't survive. After that, Kino was taken to an alternate world where he explains a bit about himself, and he explains how just like most of the boys when they're younger all they want to be is a hero, but Kajino was actually serious about this path in life and would stop at nothing until he is the strongest being known in the universe. At school he is known as the mediocre, harmless and inconspicuous background character, but behind the mask he was actually an incredible fighter and gave everything to his training, but it simply wasn't enough. Ao's thoughts of being this hero get even more deep as he even gets upset about being just an ordinary human, as humans are just way too weak, unable to fight off a group of military soldiers if it ever came to that. And no matter how strong a person might be, such as a mixed martial arts master or even a boxing world champion, you're still labeled as a human being. So if a nuclear explosion ever erupted, they would still all cease to exist, evaporating into dust. But Kajino can't afford that to be his life, and wants nothing more than to be the one who can't be stopped, the one who they will call the Eminent Shadow, a godlike being with many powerful girls in his entourage. But the only possible way of becoming this hero is by being reincarnated into this other world, which is what happened to him after the truck incident. He tells us how he's just been blessed with a new life and born with these incredible powers, something nobody has ever quite seen before, and he will only use then to gain more power, giving off true anti-hero vibes. He's now known as Sid Kajino and has a secret underground clan called the Shadows. But before we see how Kago got to this god status level in this magical world, we're taken back to a brief flashback. After that fateful day of Trun, Kajino, or now known as Cid, woke up as the son of Baron and Lady Kagu, aristocrats living out in the kingdom of Midgar. Apparently, the Kagano bloodline is known for producing dark knights or fencers who can enhance their abilities with magic. For this reason, his parents have high expectations for their children, particularly Claire, Kagu, Sid's elder sister. With her exceptional talent, he grew up in his sister's shadows. Unbeknownst to his family, he has another business to deal with at night, hunting down bandits after dominating the battle using his slime sword and bodysuit. Sid takes possession of the stolen treasures. Not long after the messy confrontation, he finds a strange creature trapped inside a cage. As it piques his interest, Sid takes it home for some experimentation. After a month of trial and error, his efforts eventually bear fruit, and the hideous-looking creature transforms into its true nature as a beautiful elven girl. Before she can see Sid, he immediately puts on an act to look cool, claiming that he broke a curse cast on her and the heroes' descendants. He takes out a fiction book about a demon named Diablos, continuing his fabricated story. 3 mysterious heroes defeated Diablos, but before he succumbed to his death, he put a curse on them. Sid also tells her that the cult of Diablos is plotting something to revive their boss, the demon behind her suffering. Introducing himself as Shadow, he asked the girl to join him in his mission to subjugate the cult. Although he just made it all up, she agrees to be a member of Sid's organization, the Shadow Garden. From then on, the girl became his second in command and earned the moniker Alpha. 3 years pass and Sid, now 13 years old, is spotted sparring with CLA. Although he could have easily defeated her, he decided to keep it low-key, hence CLA sends him flying into Madeira. As it turns out, when nobles reach 15 years old, they must attend the Midgar Royal Spellsword Academy for Dark Knights. However, when the day CLA's departure arrives, she's nowhere to be found with her room and Shambles. The following scene shows another elven girl named Beta, the first additional member recruited by Alpha. While she's just one of the many members added to the organization, as we see Alpha and the others finding leads about CLA's whereabouts. Interestingly enough, Sid's subordinates figure out that the cult of Diablos is behind Claire's disappearance, unaware that his made-up story has come to life. Sid fancies his members to win acting rewards for being so immersed in their roles. Beta Belly leaves CLA was targeted because the culprit suspected her as one of the hero's descendants. She proceeds with laying out the map of the enemy's hideouts, but she's unsure where they keep CLA. Taking out a slime knife, Sid throws it at the map, revealing his sister's location. Without further ado, he commands Beta to gather the Shadow Gardens' elite members, better known as the Seven Shadows. Meanwhile, Viscount Grease, a high-ranking officer from the cult of Diablos, is seen taunting CLA, having been restrained with magic sealing chains. CLA could dodge his attack, while Grease gives credit to Baron Kagu for her improvement in fights. CLA makes it clear that training with Sid helped her. When Grease expresses his interest in her brother, she lashes out at him, paying no heed to her injured hands as CLA threatens Grease should he lay a finger on her brother. The latter knocks her out cold. Suddenly, one of Grease's men alerts him about some intruders. Much to his horror, all his underlings fall prey to the Seven Shadows. Enraged, Grease charges at Alpha, but he's no match for her as she draws the first blood. Out of options, he takes a red pill, which instantly boosts his power. Grease manages to shove Alpha away, but since he's still outnumbered, he runs off. Just when he thinks he will make it out alive, he runs into Sid, who effortlessly blocks his attack. All the while, RMC gives Grease a lecture about how to wield a sword properly until he's had enough of the playtime. Hence, Grease kicks the bucket, and Sid takes his locket necklace with a picture of him and his daughter. As soon as CLA returns home, she keeps throwing a tantrum. Nonetheless, she has no choice but to depart for the royal capital. Later that night, Sid meets with the Seven Shadows to discuss their next mission, only to be told that they will leave him. From the looks of it, the Seven Shadows discovered that the cult of Diablos operates on a larger scale, so they decided to split up to take them down. In the end, Sid let them go all the while thinking that the girls grew tired of their role-playing. 2 years passed and Sid enrolled in the same academy as his sister. As expected, he keeps a low profile and chooses Scale and Putt as friends, both at the bottom of the nobles ladder. On the way to the academy, the duo reminds Sid about his punishment for scoring the lowest on the test. Talk about public humiliation. RMC has to confess love to the campus belle and deal with a brutal rejection. Speaking of the most sought-after girl, they witness Princess Alexia Midgar rejecting another guy upon their arrival at the academy. Before the night falls, he executes his plan, acting all timid in front of Alexia, with the two potato heads watching. In the background, Sid confesses to the princess, and much to his surprise, she accepts his feeling safe to say that the news of them dating spread like wildfire, leaving the students staring daggers at Sid. While they still can't believe yesterday's plot twist, Alexia joins their table at the cafeteria. Having seated with the royalty, they get served with lots of food. In a desperate attempt to get dumped, Sid gobbles up the food until he notices Alexia cracking a smile. Sometime later, Xenon Griffey, their sword instructor, introduces Sid to the other students as the newest member of Section 1. Thanks to Alexia's influence, he got out of the lowest section. Minutes later, Sid and Alexia spar with each other, and the former notices that her swordsmanship skills aren't half bad, although he finds it bland. On the other hand, Alexia shares the same sentiments about Sid's skills, but then she somehow feels annoyed as she sees herself at him. Just as they finish the training session, Xenon enters the picture, revealing that he is actually Alexia's fiancé. Later that day, the couple meets to set the record straight about their relationship there and then. Sid realizes that Alexia chose him as her boyfriend because he is a low-rank noble who she believes is easy to manipulate. She basically wants to continue their boyfriend and girlfriend setup until Xenon breaks off their engagement, while Sid claims he doesn't want to get mixed up with other people's problems, let alone attract more unnecessary attention. He instantly changes his mind when Alexia throws a gold coin in haste. He takes it like a dog catching a frisbee. Sid grabs the second coin with his mouth, hence that seals the deal. Days pass and their fake relationship continues, irking the male students. However, Xenon seems nonchalant about their public display of affection. 2 weeks have passed since they started dating, but still they're not making any progress. Inside the train, Alexia confesses that she has always wanted to catch up to her sister Iris, who's been their family's pride when it comes to fencing despite all her efforts to be stronger. Her sister is miles ahead of her. To make her feel any better, Sid admits that he likes Alexia's sword skill, to which she replies that she already heard the same words from Iris when she suffered a humiliating defeat at a tournament. Wallowing in self-pity, Alexia draws her sword. As the tension rises between the two, the train stops and she bids him goodbye. At that point, Sid guesses it's the end of their relationship. The following day, Xenon and his subordinates approach Sid. It appears that Alexia did not return to her dormitory last night, and since Sid is the last person she was with, he becomes the primary suspect in the case of a potential kidnapping. In mere seconds, Sid is surrounded by several knights, leaving him no choice but to surrender. Elsewhere, Alexia wakes up restrained with magic sealing chains next to her cell. She notices a female humanoid monster eerily enough. A mad doctor turns up, seemingly excited to get a sample of her royal blood. Barely gathering her wits, Alexia asks the doctor why he needs her blood, to which she says that she possesses the demon blood needed to resurrect their master. At the same time, Sid is getting beaten to a pulp during his interrogation about Alexia's whereabouts. For the record, Sid can bear the pain, but since he doesn't want the minor characters to outshine him, he lets out a blood-curdling scream, pleading with his tormentors to spare his life. Meanwhile, Xenon meets with Iris and apologizes for his shortcomings because he feels responsible for Alexia's disappearance. When they talk about Sid as the suspect, Xenon stresses that although the evidence points to him as the culprit, his skill level wouldn't stand a chance against Alexia. Fortunately, Iris orders Sid's released, but they will still keep a close watch on him. The next scene pans over to Claire, who's getting tackled by a group of students as she demands to speak with the knights about their unjust arrest of her brother Rose. Oriana, the student council president, interferes to stop her. Finally released, the badly beaten Sid goes straight to his dorm. Aware he's being followed out of nowhere, he runs into Alpha, who saves him the trouble of getting rid of his pursuers. Inside his room, Alpha informs Sid that they are still gathering more information about the cult, and their organization is growing steadily. According to Sid, the girls still visit him from time to time, which makes him glad. Alpha then reveals that the cult took Alexia because of her royal blood. When she suggests disposing of the men who interrogated Sid, he protests against it, claiming that they only did their job at night. Sid excitedly sets up his eminence in the shadow room. Thanks to the stolen treasures and his earnings from being a fake boyfriend, he's able to create the perfect ambience. Later that night, Beta arrives at his doorstep, having a main character moment as it declares that the time has come. Just as he leaves his dorm, he's greeted by two knights who throw Alexia's boot to set him up. Well, the joke's on them as the lifeless bodies of their lookouts drop to the ground in a short while the knights follow their comrades to the afterlife. Amidst the chaos taking over the city, the madman rushes to the cell and injects something into the humanoid monster. Alexia warns the doctor not to do it, but he turns a deaf ear, and thus the disfigured creature evolves and takes his life. Surprisingly, she helps Alexia escape. Looking for a way out, she bumps into Xenon, who confesses that he owns the facility and funded the doctor's research in exchange for getting promoted. In the Knights of Rounds, Xenon handed his fiancée to the cult. Infuriated, Alexia charges at him, but he easily blocks her attacks. Using her sister's technique, she manages to wound Xenon's arm, only to be disarmed in return. As Alexia slowly accepts her tragic fate, Sid walks in and introduces himself as Shadow. Xenon immediately recognizes him as the vigilante going after the cult, claiming Shadow only targets their weak minions. Xenon warns him that he's about to face one of the cult's core members. Acting all high and mighty, Xenon lunges at him, but he misses his target. Just then, Shadow appears behind him, asking where is the core member he was bragging about. Switching to another clash, the monster starts wreaking havoc in the city, overwhelming the knights. Despite landing a solid hit on her body, she just keeps healing herself. Iris intervenes, launching powerful strikes, but it's a futile effort. That is until Alpha appears at the scene and mutters that Iris is making the monster suffer, and so Alpha takes it upon herself to put the monster out of her misery. Just as the blinding light disappears, the monster returns to her true nature as a human, or more specifically as Milia, Grease's daughter. Before Alpha leaves, she tells Iris she can be a spectator for the time being as the Shadow Garden deals With the situation taking the battle more seriously, Xenon musters more magical power and manages to push Shadow back. He takes his chance and goes all out on the offensive, but Shadow still overpowers him. In the middle of the intense swordsmanship display, Alexia realizes she's watching the swordplay she's been aiming to master. Desperate to prove himself worthy to be called the cult's core member, Xenon swallows the red pills. After the dramatic transformation, Xenon states he's the third awakened. For all that, Shadow holds out against his destructive power and turns him into his punching bag. As Shadow summons a magic barrier, Xenon goes frantic and attempts to launch a sneak attack. However, his sword breaks into smither with that. Shadow unleashes a massive explosion, leaving a huge crater in the middle of the city. Unaware that Shadow is her ex-boyfriend, Alexia tries to copy his technique until Iris interrupts her and pulls her in for a hug. Seeing how worried Iris is about her, Alexia reconciles with her sister. The next day, Alexia and Sid are spotted hanging out in school with Xenon taken out of the picture. The princess asks Sid if they can resume their relationship as lovers. For the first time in her life, Alexia suffers rejection. She did not take it lightly though, as the wall turned bloody red. Soon afterward, the Shadow Garden ladies gather for an emergency meeting. While they celebrate their master's victory, another problem arises, and this time an unknown group is pretending to be Shadow Garden and delivering their own version of justice. Now that Iris is aware of the cult's and Shadow Garden's existence, she appoints her trusted knights GL and Marco to be part of her new investigation team. Iris orders them to find someone who can identify the mysterious relic they found in the incident location. Speaking of which, a pink-haired girl named Cher Barnett is seen looking at the item in a book until she bumps into Sid sporting an early Halloween look. Sherry, who turns out to be a brilliant researcher, is summoned by Iris to study the relic while having second thoughts because she's still a student. Lutheran Sherry's adoptive father encourages her to accept the challenge. Ultimately, she agrees, and then Iris assigns the new team Crimson Order to watch over her. Alexia volunteers to be part of it, and Iris gives her permission. On a lighter note, the chaotic trio visits a department store but is welcomed by a long queue. Suddenly, a lady approaches Sid and asks him to participate in a survey. He agrees and leaves Skeel and Po waiting at the end of the line. Later on, the woman leads him to a large door, and behind it is a mansion enclosed by the store. Another door opens, revealing a throne room where Sid sees Gamma, one of the 7 shadows. Turns out that she's the owner of the establishment. Inspired by Sid's story about his previous life, at that instant he remembers sharing random stuff with the girls about his world. Sid acknowledges Gamma as the smartest among the 7, but she's a non-athletic type, and her falling down the stairs is the proof feeding her master's ego. She asks him to sit on the throne, and Sid loves it as he feels like a king when Gamma gets asked about the status of her business. She proudly mentions that they already have multiple franchises operating across the city. Shortly, she presents a pile of gold coins at the organization's disposal, shocking Sid. Shifting to a different topic, Gamma speaks about the people masquerading as Shadow Garden. She assures Sid that they are doing everything to capture the perpetrators. He then remembers his unfortunate encounter with Alexia. Even though he's still connecting the dots, he declares that he has figured it all out. Shortly, Gamma introduces Nu as the newest elite member of the Shadows. Before leaving, Sid says he wants to buy some chocolate, but Gamma offers it for free. As he distracts the ladies with his annoying laugh, he manages to pilfer for a single coin. As it seems, Sid thinks that Alexia has gone mad after giving her a taste of her own medicine. Sensing her presence nearby, Sid claims he's about to poop, forcing his friends to leave him battling his ordeal alone because of the curfew. Not long after a gut-wrenching scene, Sid heads straight to the back alley. There he sees the wounded Alexia cornered by 3 men pretending to be Shadow Garden members. Just as they're about to add her to their victims, Shadow intervenes, taking one of them down for tainting the name of Shadow Garden. He chases after the remaining 2, and another one bites the dust. When he's about to finish them off, Nu shows up and requests she handled the last guy for interrogation. Elsewhere, Gone Night, the Outlaws' leader, learns that his underlings have been dealt with. That said, he's unbothered, stressing that retrieving the relic is their top priority. Alexia meets Iris and informs her that the culprit is Shadow Garden's imposter. However, Iris still believes both Shadow Garden and the cult are enemies of the kingdom. Funnily enough, another rumor about Sid spreads quickly. Even though he made it all up, the students poked fun at him for filling his pants last night. The duo who swore they would keep it a secret nervously asks Sid if he has the chocolate. Despite their betrayal, they still receive chocolates, intending to give them to their crushes. Skeel goes first and confesses to the girl he was smitten with, only to be confronted by her fiancé. When Pat tries his luck, the girl runs off screaming that her star walk. Is at it again. Caught up in a background character moment, Sid decides to give his chocolate to the first girl he sees. Coincidentally enough, he gives it to Sherry and abruptly leaves at home. Sherry wonders about what happened in the library until her father comes into her room and notices the chocolates. After learning that a boy gave her the sweets, Lutheran tells his naive daughter that it's a love confession, still processing her thoughts and emotions. Lutheran says that Sherry's admirer is waiting for her answer, disguised as a student. Reports to Sid about the cult member she held captive. Unfortunately, she couldn't get any information from the man because someone brainwashed him until he completely lost it. While news states that the enemies use orphans as foot soldiers known as Children of Diablo, Sid's mind is preoccupied with the fencing tournament his friends signed him up for. She then mentions Rex, one of the children who maintains self-awareness despite being subjected to brainwashing. Still distracted, Sid asks New to give him some time to think. Soon enough, the tournament kicks off with Claire emerging victorious against her opponent. For the next matchup, Sid is pitted against Rose. As soon as the referee begins the fight, both parties charge forward until Sid takes out fake blood, allowing his opponent to hit him, calling the trick bloody tornado. He keeps standing back up after countless times of flying into the arena and coughing fake blood. Sid awaits Rose's finishing move, that is until the referee stops the fight and the defending champion is proclaimed the winner. While the medical team takes it to the inn, for Rose mutters that he earned her respect for his unwavering spirit. After receiving treatment, Sid is approached by Sherry, praising the courage and determination he displayed in the battle. She then gives him some cookies and suggests they start out as friends. Despite the confusion, Sid agrees to whatever Sherry is insinuating, as if their situation isn't awkward enough. Lutheran joins their table, unwilling to get acquainted with important characters. He uses his injuries to excuse himself. Sometime later, Sherry meets Alexia. While the princess assumes Sherry visited her to discuss the relic, she asks if she's still going out with Sid. Alexia admits they have broken up and they were never romantically involved with each other. Hearing this, Sherry feels relieved as she can now concentrate on her research. However, Alexia feels otherwise as she struggles to keep her composure. A few days later, Sid notices that most students start treating him nicely. While immersed in his thoughts, Rose and her assistant entered the room to discuss the upcoming election. Elsewhere, Gone Knight begins his plan, encapsulating the whole academy in a barrier. As expected, Sid is the only one who's aware of what's happening. Arriving at the school gate, Alexia is shocked to see the guard lifeless on the ground. Meanwhile, Sid notices he's having trouble using his magic until the Children of Diablo barge into the room, still masquerading as Shadow Garden. They announced they will take over the academy, prompting Rose to raise her sword. To her dismay, her magic isn't working, and before she knows it, the enemies destroy her weapon. Taking advantage of the situation, one of them tries to end her life, but Sid jumps into the scene to protect her, unaware that Sid only saved her to play the role of a background character who dies first. Rose mistakenly thinks that the former cared for her. After that, the enemies drag the students into the auditorium. Left for dead, Sid pounds his chest until he successfully revives himself. With his magic still obstructed, he turns it into threads to counter the magic ceiling barrier. While Sherry is busy studying the relic, Rex breaks into her window to retrieve the item. Thankfully, before he can hurt Sherry, Glenn parries the blow with his sheer strength. Marco, who's also facing someone, tells Sherry to flee the scene with the barrier's threat. Iris hesitates to command her men to rescue the students. On the other hand, Sid shoots down the enemies from the rooftop to kill time while waiting for the night to strike. At the same time, he spots Sherry walking freely in the building as if the school isn't surrounded by bad guys. If it weren't for Sid's slimes, this could have been her last exposure in the series. She then trips by the stairs, forcing Sid to catch her by himself. He gives her an earful before they head to her father's room, where she finds the book she's been looking for identifying the artifact as the Eye of Avarice. Sherry says it absorbs magical energy, rendering the knights powerless. To make matters worse, she discovers that once the artifact fills itself up it will explode. Having said that, Sherry reveals that the relic she's studying can counter the Eye of Avarice, as it can store an immense amount of magical energy. On his way to get the tools Sherry needs, Sid runs into Rex and some small fry. He immediately gets rid of his escorts and pushes him back, thinking that Sid is using some relic to boost his speed. Rex summons a net barrier to detect his movements, only to fail big time. The smug look on his face quickly fades when he notices that he's surrounded by his lifeless allies, and just like that Rex counts himself in. A while later, New comes across the Crimson Order members. Glenn did not make it while Marco was severely wounded. It is then revealed that Marco was her betrothed as she contemplates what to do with him. Sid turns up to collect the tools. While he's at it, New informs him that the reinforcements have arrived and they're just waiting for his orders. As she stresses how risky it is to initiate the rescue operation, Sid asks for her help to search for the rest of the materials. Once he leaves, In decides to spare Marco's life. After refining the relic, Sherry leads Sid to a secret passage connecting to the auditorium. Just then she recalls her mother's death in another flashback as Sherry stood before her mother's grave. Lutheran stayed by her side for her great contributions to the field of research. Lutheran took in Sherry as his own child, determined to return the favor. She promised to help her father in whichever way she could. Back to the present, Sherry walks into the tunnel alone. Inside the auditorium, she activates the relic, nullifying the effects of the Eye of Avarice. With their magic back, the knights retaliate, turning the place into a battle arena. Of course, Sid, channeling his shadow persona, won't let them have fun by themselves as he descends from the glass ceiling. Also, the real Shadow Garden arrives to lend him a hand as the students start evacuating. Gone Knight sets the auditorium on fire before he retreats. Once outside, Iris asks Rose about what happened, to which she says that Shadow Garden saved them from the group of the same name. With her statement, Iris grows more suspicious about Shadow Garden's motives. Still inside the auditorium, Cher frantically searches for Lutheran. Speaking of her father, Sid confronts him, revealing that he is none other than the Gaunt Knight. When he's asked why he committed such atrocities, Lutheran confesses he was once a sword-plying master until he became sick. Desperate to cure his illness, he exhausted all his resources and found the artifact. With the help of Cher's mother, he funded her research and confirmed the artifact's power. However, since the Eye of Avarice could be destructive, she insisted on surrendering it to the government, and so Lutheran took her life, and the unsuspecting Sherry continued her mother's research. Sid suggests they settled the score between them, but in a snap of a finger, Lutheran sends him plummeting to the ground just as he bids him farewell. Shadow keeps him company, knowing full well that he's no match against Shadow. Lutheran combines the Control Relic and the Eye of Avarice and successfully regains his strength as the top swordsman. Just like Xenon, the old man is all bark and no bite as Shadow effortlessly blocks his aggressive charges. Standing in the same spot in a vain attempt to make Shadow put his guard down, Lutheran reveals that he has already made arrangements for him and his organization to take the blame for the crimes he committed. Unfazed, Shadow declares that he doesn't care because Shadow Garden doesn't exist to protect the kingdom. Instead, it's walking on its own path. After the speech, Shadow punishes Lutheran with the same method he did to Sherry's mother. Seeing her father gone, Sherry bawls her eyes out. Since Shadow believes that it's better if Cher doesn't know anything, he leaves her be. Sometime after the incident, the Shadow Garden becomes the sworn enemy of the kingdom. Following this announcement, the ruined academy grants an early summer break with both her parents gone. Sherry informs Sid she'll be studying abroad to start anew and pursue different research. He then asks her about her new goal, but she refuses to divulge it, stressing it's a secret. Sherry exudes a sinister aura. During the summer break, Sid receives a letter from Aleph summoning him to the Sacred Land Lindorm. The following scene shows Epsilon, the fifth member of the Seven Shadows, seemingly excited to start her day through Sid's teaching. She can alter her body features as she pleases with slime magic. Shifting to the events after the Shadow Garden got wiped out, Rose rushed to the infirmary in tears. She held Sid's hand there, and then she accepted his feelings and offered him her heart. Inside the train bound for Linder, the unexpected couple is spotted traveling together. While they only chanced upon each other at the train station, upon arriving at their destination, a keychain with a left demonic arm pierced with a sword draws Sid's attention. Rose explains that they are in the city where the hero Olivier cut off Diablo's left arm. She adds that within the area surrounding Lindworm lies the ruins called Sanctuary, which the locals believe is where Diablo's left arm got sealed away. Strolling around, they come across a book signing event of a famous author. Natsum. Exhilarated, Rose falls in line to get the signature of her favorite author. While checking the book, Sid notices that the contents were plagiarized from his previous world. Thinking that there's another person who reincarnated there, Sid lines up until he's greeted by Beta joining Gamma as they make a living out of his wisdom. At the cathedral, Alpha is seen standing beside a statue and the lifeless body of Archbishop Drake. She leaves the place at once. When knights show up later that night, Sid catches sight of a cloaked man running on the rooftop. He hurriedly runs after him and deflects his attack. Epsilon then intervenes and delivers the decisive blow. Before they part ways, she reports that their target was attacked by the cult's executioner, who managed to escape due to unforeseen circumstances. Epsilon declares they will move to Plan B. It goes without saying that Sid will proceed with his own plans. Feeling confident about his physique, Sid plunges into the hot spring as Alexia tries to gather herself together. When the princess is asked why she's in Lindworm, she says she's a special guest for the goddess's trial. Answering the same question, Sid claims a friend invited him to watch the event. Alexia explains that the goddess's trial is a fighting ritual where challengers participate to face ancient warriors from the sanctuary. She shares that the wandering swordsman Venom unexpectedly summoned Olivier before, but he lost against the hero. Soon enough, the goddess's trial commences through the initiative of the new acting Archbishop Jack Nelson. Before opening the event, Nelson drove Alexia away as he refused to be audited, stressing that she was supposed to investigate the late Archbishop and not him. In a short while, a magic circle appears in the battle arena and envelopes the area. With a barrier, Toparius from Oriana Kingdom steps in as the first contender, but not a single soul emerges from the sanctuary, indicating that the warrior is not deemed worthy. As the participants continue to fail the summoning ritual, Sid can't help but imagine Gate crashing the competition as the mysterious man. Much to his disappointment, the event doesn't allow walk-in contenders. Unbeknownst to Sid, Rose registered his name as one of the participants, hoping to impress her father with his potential, completely aware that once he steps inside the arena, a spirit on par with his strength might come out. He resolves to take part. As Shadow, to everyone's shock, he summons Aurora, the Witch of Calamity, the most powerful witch in history. Both flashing a smirk, Aurora initiates the battle with her bloody spears, forcing Shadow to be on the defensive. After dodging all her attacks, he concludes the battle in his favor, one hitting his opponent. Shadow could only wish he could have fought Aurora when she was alive and in full power. After his flawless victory, he immediately disappears, baffling the audience. Shortly, the barrier collapses and a portal pops up in the arena. Following the odd occurrence, Sid notices that a portal is beside him. As it won't stop bugging him, he decides to enter the magic door. Moving on to the separate portal, Nelson cancels the goddess trial and commands his men to escort the crowd outside as he tries to convince Alexia and Sid's other simps to leave the Shadow Garden. Ladies welcome his side. Alpha and her team enter the portal first, while Epsilon and the rest take Gamma as a hostage to persuade Nelson to go with them. While Rose worries for her safety, Alexia doesn't buy her terrible acting, refusing to yield and calls upon Venom, who instantly attacks Epsilon. Even though her slime cushion saves her, he lashes out at Venom for exposing her secret, turning him into a chopping block. Consequently, Epsilon drags Nelson into the portal and the rest of them follow, including Alexia and Rose. Once inside the sanctuary, Alpha leads them to Olivier's statue, which turns out to be an elven girl bearing a striking resemblance to her. It appears that Nelson actually knows that they have been possessed before, which Sid once called the demon's curse. Walking further into the sanctuary, Alpha opens another door and leads them to the graveyard of the ancient heroes. Alongside Olivia herself, Alpha dives deeper into the sanctuary. Elsewhere, Sid stumbles upon Aurora, who denies that she summoned him. The witch notes she enjoyed their battle, and Sid tells the same. After a chit-chat, he frees Aurora from her restraints and agrees to work with her to find the exit. She then reveals that the sanctuary is a prison where the ancient heroes' memories are stored. Aurora claims that the magical core must be destroyed for her to be free. However, they can't use magic inside as the realm just keeps absorbing their power. Sid assures Aurora that he's good at breaking things. Looking into Olivier's memory, they witness how the cult gathered orphans and subjected them to Unsettling experiments, the majority of the children did not make it and a few girls survived, including Olivier, who was proven compatible with Diablo cells. As Nelson puts it, they had no choice since they needed to create a powerful being to stand against the demon used as a pawn. Olivier followed their orders to extract more of Diablo's cells, backed up by the cult's collection of artifacts. In connection, the red pills came from Diablo's cells. Unsatisfied with the pills' effects, the young Nelson created the beads of Diablos, capable of granting tremendous power and a body that will never age. While Alexia believes its side effect is hair loss, Nelson states he's bald because of stress. Alpha chimes in, revealing the beads' two flaws. Firstly, they need to take it once a year. Secondly, the supply is limited, which explains why the Knights of Rounds only has 12 members, since they have not perfected the formula. The cult continues to rely on Diablo's cells and the hero's descendants. Like Alpha herself calling Nelson the 11th of the rounds, he goes berserk, but before he can fully transform, Delta pierces his body and throws him down the water. All hell breaks loose when Nelson comes out alive, splitting the group and trapping them in different memories. With that, Alpha and Delta face the demonic Nelson, generating multiple clones of himself. Although Delta easily takes down the clones, she realizes her power is slowly draining. Apparently, the closer they get to the center of the sanctuary, the weaker they become and the stronger Nelson gets. Sid and Aurora find themselves in another memory, a war zone filled with casualties. There they run into her younger version, crying uncontrollably. Aurora decides to enter and delete the painful memory, but the corpses suddenly rise from the dead, attacking them. At that moment, Aurora deduces that the sanctuary is rejecting them. Switching to Epsilon's group, they come across the sanctuary's archive and discover documents about the possessed. Along with the other files, they take pictures of them as to why they have a camera. Ita, the seventh member of the Shadow and a scientist, introduced the device to their world again thanks to Shadow's knowledge. Despite the magic depletion, Sid and Aurora managed to defeat several zombies, but unfortunately they just keep coming. With that, Sid claims the life of the young Aurora and the memory shatters. Soon afterward, they reach the sanctuary's center. Going on a rampage, Delta proves herself in the league of her own as she obliterates Nelson's clones. Despite it being fueled, he summons more clones only to be wiped out in seconds. As it seems, the magical cord lies behind the door, locked up in chains. While Sid notes that the chains will only break his sword, Aurora tells him that the holy sword in front of them is the key. However, when he tries to lift the weapon, he can't pull it out. Looking at the magical inscription, Aurora confirms that only the chosen one or the hero's descendants hold the right to wield the holy sword. While the two take a break, resting does not exist in Delta's dictionary as she continues to dominate Nelson's copies. After beating over 100 clones, the memory collapses and they get transported elsewhere. Refusing to back down, Nelson calls upon Olivier to fight and is dead. At the same time, Epsilon cuts in and announces that they have finished the investigation. For this reason, they leave the fuming Nelson and return to the outside world. Just then, the Archbishop gets notified that someone has infiltrated the sanctuary center. Going by the typical story, Sid expects the main protagonist to arrive and lift the sword, but much to his disappointment, Nelson and his shining forehead show up. He quickly notices that Alpha and Olivier look identical. Upon the request of Nelson, Olivier charges at Sid and dominates the battle. Witnessing the one-sided fight, Aurora steps in and stops him. Nelson then declares he will spare Sid's life if she cooperates with their research. Aurora considers Nelson's offer as she implies that Sid doesn't stand a chance against Olivier. Safe to say that our MC takes offense and thus he keeps provoking Nelson. Angered, Nelson commands Olivier to finish him off, and so she does, while Olivier wears a deadpan expression. Aurora looks terrified and Nelson flashes a wide grin. Sid cracks an evil smile with his eyes glowing. After intentionally guiding her sword to miss his vital organs, Sid restrains Olivier and bites her neck. Having taken care of Olivier, he slowly walks toward Nelson until he pulls another trick up his sleeve. Taking advantage of the vast amount of magical energy in the sanctuary center, Nelson summons several of Olivier's clones. Upon opening his right eye, the cheap copies shatter, leaving Nelson with his jaws dropped open. It is then revealed that Sid compressed his magic into a solid mass so it wouldn't be absorbed. Having had enough of Nelson's repetitive tricks, Sid activates his ultimate spell, destroying not only the magic core but also the entire sanctuary itself. Waking up in the woods with Aurora by his side, she confesses that she actually summoned Sid. She apologizes for lying and expresses her gratitude for helping her find her peace before Aurora disappears. She says one day Sid might chance upon the real her given the present circumstances. Alexia and Rose decide to form their own organization to unravel the mysteries surrounding the cult in the Shadow Garden as Natsum Beta joins to keep a close watch on their movements. Sometime later Alpha and Epsilon talk about the information they obtained in the Sanctuary's archive. Turns out that Aurora has another name, the Demon Diablos. While Epsilon suggests reporting it to Shadow, Alpha tells her he knows it all along. Meanwhile, Alexia reports to Iris about the late and the present Archbishop's involvement with the cult, thinking that there's a more influential organization backing them up. Alexia plans to investigate the Church of the Divine Teachings. Iris then admits that she already suggested it to their father, only to be told to stand aside because of political matters. As a resolve, Iris vows to win the Busan Festival, an international fencing tournament, so as to earn the support of the general public and be heard by their father. Under the rain, Rose is seen training until she feels something is off, revealing a demonic mark on her chest. The day of the Busan Festival finally arrives, with the strongest warriors around the world gathering in the royal capital. As expected, Sid has already pictured how he would play his character while he's planning to act weak when the crowd starts booing and his opponent declares a premature victory. He will surprise everyone with an epic comeback win. To begin, Sid asks for Gamma's assistance to help him pull off the best disguise. She applies a special slime on his face and shows him some pictures for reference, opting for a weak look. Gamma suggests copying Mundane Man, an unskilled Dark Knight who was disowned by his family. Sadly, when he died, nobody in the world cared. With his face befitting his background story, Sid chooses him. Immersed in his character as Mundane, he changes his posture before a CING. Outside, Anna Rose, a participant from the Goddess's Trial, who summoned an ancient warrior, bumps into Mundane in the street. Seeing him for the first time, she suggests he forget competing in the tournament. As a response, Mundane tells Anna Rose not to judge a book by its cover, attracting more attention. A man named Quentin advises Mundane to rethink his decision and not spoil the fun of the festival. With an annoying look, Mundane tells the big guy that he's stronger than him. Fuming, Quentin starts beating him, unwilling to go against his plotted story. Mundane lies on the ground. Fortunately, Inaro stops Quentin and apologizes to Mundane for not stepping in earlier. Later that night, Sid runs into Rose, who tells him that her father has chosen the man she will marry, a high-ranking noble named Perv. As had, however, her deplorable situation doesn't end there, as her family urges her to give up being a Dark Knight, as Sid assures Rose that he'll always believe her. Her gloomy expression wears off the following day. Scale drags Sid to watch the preliminary airy fights for more chances of winning the bet. The former collects data after each battle while Cell blabs on and on about his strategy. Goldie, a proud and undefeated knight, advises him about how to flawlessly predict the winner. Sid leaves the two as the referee announces the next matchup, Gonzalez versus Mundane. As soon as Mundane enters the ring, Goldie says Gonzalez will win in less than a second. Skill, seemingly impressed by Goldie's ability to assess the warrior's battle power, gets taken aback when Mundane is announced as the winner, hence the crowd complains, wanting to get their money back. To save face, Goldie claims that Gonzalez tripped and fell during their fight and he predicted it. Enos, on the other hand, changes her tune about Mundane after seeing the two solid punches that knocked out his opponent, with Goldie facing Mundane for tomorrow's match. Skell asks Sid for money because he plans to bet on the self-professed battle analyst to help his friend save money. He refuses. The next day, Skell rushes to inform City that Rose stabbed her fiancé and ran off following the news. Beta and Alexia, as sworn allies, decide to look into the matter. Unbeknownst to the latter, Beta is conducting her own investigation, and she just learns Rose's whereabouts. Later that day, Sid encounters Beatrix, another Ellen girl searching for her late sister's daughter, claiming that her niece is a pretty girl who looks like her. Beatrix does her hood. At that instant, she reminds her of Alpha, but he chooses not to say anything. Suddenly, she draws her sword, acting as if he's scared stiff. Sid staggers and falls. Beatrix says sorry and rubs it in his face that she mistakenly thought he was strong. While watching a match, Quentin approaches Anna Rose and asks about her opinion of Mundane. Turns out that he was also watching when he quickly ended the fight, as Mundane suddenly piques their interest. After belittling him, they anticipate his battle with Goldie. Speaking of which, Anna Rose reveals that Goldie's undefeated because he is wise when choosing his opponents. As she puts it, he only fights those he believes are inferior to his skills. Truth be told, he messed up this time. Goldie initiates the battle, but Mundane isn't in the mood yet, as he cracks his neck and at the same time dodges His attack. Strangely enough, the former feels that Mundane cuts his tummy when in reality he's just standing there slowly unsheathing his sword. Irritated, Goldie resorts to using his secret sword art only to be countered by a sneeze, and just like that, Gold's own magic attack leads him to his crushing defeat, ruining his record. Elsewhere, Iris visits Perv to hand him the security plan. For the main event of the Bushan festival, she offers her trusted Lance of Knights for his increased security, but he declines. She then notices that Perv is in a really good condition compared to what's published in the news. Perv tells Iris that he will deal with the pressing problem on his own, just like how she rescued her sister Alexia before. As Rose's father commands Iris to let Perv do as he wishes, her suspicions about him grow even more. Back at the arena, Mundane finally gets his revenge on Quentin, who gets humbled quickly. With his latest win, he secured a spot in the main tournament. Enos, his next opponent, approaches him and tries to intimidate him. Wearing his signature smirk, he removes one of his armor plates, revealing that it's heavy as the ground cracks after it lands. The next scene shows Rose inside a tunnel running away from the night sent after her. Walking in the streets, Sid hears a piano playing and gets reminded of his childhood. Even though he was forced to play the instrument, he enjoyed it in the end. That is until he recognizes his favorite piece playing in the background, the Moonlight Sonata. Just as Sid believes this time he will meet someone from his previous world, he sees Epsilon on the piano joining Gamma and Beta. Epsilon shares that she has built connections with influential people throughout her career and even received rewards for her compositions, or more accurately plagiarized works. Hearing this, Sid doesn't know exactly what to feel. Although Beta tried to stall the Alexia from finding Rose for her own sake, the princess eventually figured she might be hiding in the underground passages. Slumping to the ground, Rose recalls how the king welcomed her when she got summoned for the announcement of her engagement. As soon as Rose saw her father, she knew something was wrong. To add, even the knights seemingly lost themselves as they flashed a sinister smile. In the end, the cult member Perv, whom she had no idea how he brainwashed everyone, framed her up as she considers turning herself in to prevent a war between the kingdoms of Midgar and Oriana and save her father. He remembers Sid and wonders if he still believes in her. Just then, the signs of possession grow more apparent as her body starts to change. Suddenly, the Moonlight Sonata plays. Rose follows the music and leads him to Shadow playing on the piano. Upon finishing the piece, Shadow asks Rose what she desires to accomplish, to which the latter says she wants to protect the people she holds dear. Seeing her resolve, Shadow grants Rose immense power and frees her from the possession. After giving her a pep talk, Shadows leaves, signaling the entrance of the cult members. With her newly found power, Rose ends them with a single slash. Sensing the unusual burst of magical energy, Alexia and Beta hurriedly search for its source until they find Rose. Alexia then bombards her with questions about the magic and the news about her fiancé, but she refuses to answer, stressing that she doesn't want to drag her into her mess for failing to keep her promise that they won't keep a secret from each other. Alexia resolves to use force to make Rose speak. After beating Alexia, Rose leaves her to Beta as she decides to stop hiding to fight for what she believes in, for always avoiding her and making her wait the whole day. Claire beats Sid once she settles her nerves. She hands her brother a ticket for the main tournament. It appears that she replaced Rose after the controversy at the venue. Sid finds out that the ticket Claire gave her is for VIP seating. Shortly, he finds himself seated beside Iris, who tells him she's planning to absorb CLA to her personal order once she graduates. Iris takes the opportunity to apologize to Sid for the trouble Alexia and her ex-fiancé's on caused him when the students ask Iris about her personal favorite among the participants. She mentions Anna Rose, even so she has no plan to lose against anyone. Sid chimes in asking if Mundane caught her attention too, but the students state that the guy is unskilled and just lucky. Hearing this, Sid can't contain his excitement as the build-up he set up for Mundane's reputation is going as smoothly as he planned. Iris then speaks about the war goddess Beatrix, who turns out to be the first ever Bushan Festival champion. Unfortunately, the Elven Swordmaster won't be competing this year. Sad believes that Beatrix is strong like her niece, but he doesn't expect her to be famous. Sensing a powerful presence nearby, Sid excuses himself for a second. Soon afterward, he stumbles upon Beatrix again. She keeps asking him about the elf she's been looking for, but he keeps mum. Sometime later, Perv sits on Sid's vacant seat and informs Iris that the king is in bad shape but will attend tomorrow's event. Iris shares that her father Klaus will also watch tomorrow. The next match grabs their attention as Anna Rose steps inside the arena. With her noteworthy skills, Perv expresses his interest in the young fencer, planning to invite her to serve under his kingdom. When Iris is asked about her opinion of Mundane, she notes that she hasn't seen him fight. To finally let her see Mun's battle prowess, the referee starts the battle from the get-go. Anna Rose goes for short-range combat. She throws aggressive attacks, but Mundane's speed overwhelms her, parrying and evading all her charges. Upon Seeing an opening, Anna Rose attempts to finish him off only to swing her sword in the air in a short while Mundane strikes the first blow. She changes her strategy to focus on counterattack, but it's utterly pointless, hence Mundane slays another tournament favorite. Following our MC's victory, he will face Iris, which leads Perv to ask her if she's confident in winning the battle against the tournament's dark horse. While Iris acknowledges Mun's beautiful sword play, she points out that she's still on a different level. Seeing Mundane as a potential threat to his plans, Perv orders his henchmen to investigate him. At the VIP section, Iris stops the guards, forbidding Beatrix from entering the area, and declares she is her guest all the while. The guys didn't know that she was the legendary elf swordmaster. Once the word spread out, people flock around her. She takes her chance and asks each one of them about her missing niece, but to no avail. Meanwhile, at the castle, Per forces the king to swallow a liquid that makes him obey every single order from the former, as it seems he's planning to use the king to go against the father of the Midgar sisters and spark a war. If everything goes according to his plan, the puppet leader Per, arranged beforehand, will take Klaus's throne. After the investigation of Mundane, Perf still has no idea about his identity. While searching for their seat, they pass by Iris and Beatrix, with the latter stating that the king smells bad. Exasperated, Perv raises his voice at Beatrix. Iris immediately interferes and informs Perv that her guest is the war goddess. At that point, he deduces that she might have awakened the hero's blood, adding her to his list of potential threats. After Claire's victory, Iris heads to the arena for her match against Mundane, aiming to one-shot her opponent. Iris musters her strength until she sees a spine-chilling image of herself dying a horrible death, as if her body moved on its own. Iris finds herself backing away from Mundane as she tries to pull herself together. Another illusion leaves her distraught with fear. At the same time, Rose makes her way to the VIP section until she comes across slain cult members. The Shadow Garden then turns up before her eyes, with Beta telling Rose to carry out her mission. As Iris keeps chickening out, the crowd goes furious. Consequently, she goes Super Saiyan mode and lunges at Mundane. To her shock, she notices that he hasn't even unsheathed his sword. At the speed of light, Mundane disarms Iris, and he's proclaimed the winner. Following his daughter's loss, Klaus exits the venue. While Perf can't believe that Iris tastes defeat in a one-sided battle, BB's attention immediately shifts to Rose, who just returned. She apologizes to her father for the mistake she made and for what she's about to do. Against PV's orders, the king forgives his daughter. With that, Rose leaps toward Per, but he uses her father as his shield. To his shock, Rose did not fall back as she freed her father from PV's control in the most unexpected way. As she resolves to end her suffering, Per commands his subordinates to stop her. In a trice, Mundane appears and gets rid of the cult members. Thinking it's the perfect time to drop his act, Mundane transforms into Shadow, but Rose ruins the atmosphere by calling him the stylish ruffian slayer. Turns out that she was saved by him before at the hands of the bandits. From then on, Rose dreamed of becoming an excellent fencer. Shadow reminds Rose that she hasn't fulfilled her mission, so she flees the scene at once, itching to fight a formidable opponent. Beatrix attacks Shadow, giving Perv his chance to escape. Seeing Shadow again, Iris screams his name with such disdain as Beatrix struggles to land a hit on Shadow's body. Iris appears to lend her a hand, wielding a mithril blade, another artifact. Caught up in a 2v1 setup, Shadow couldn't be any happier as the whole town turns into their battlefield. Iris manages to push him back to a construction site, prompting him to grab crowbars there, and then he remembers Manu Kagu as the stylish ruffian slayer. While they are at it, Alpha offers Rose to be a member of the Shadow Garden, to which she accepts. As anticipated, the combined powers of the two ladies can't hold a candle to Shadow as he stomps on their wounded bodies. He finally decides to leave, but they continue to get back on their knees. Iris then warns Shadow that he just made an enemy of the entire kingdom, so he has nowhere to run to. Shadow bursts into maniacal laughter and makes it clear that running away has never crossed his mind. Just then, he casts his ultimate spell, leaving their blood running cold. In the end, Shadow did not activate the destructive magic and vanished into thin air. Frustrating, Iris lets out a piercing cry. Sometime after the incident, the kingdom publishes news about Iris and Beatrix driving away Shadow. Piercing Shadow's picture, Sherry, far from her innocent character, vows to get even with him. In another series of events, Beatrix leaves the town empty-handed. The Shadow Garden ladies get back to their routine, and Sid returns to being a normal student and a typical nobody. Taking Rose to Alexandria Shadow Garden base of operations, she introduces the new recruit to Lambda, the organization's drill instructor, and leaves her under her care. For starters, Lambda calls Rose 666 before tearing her clothes, signaling her rebirth from being a princess to a pure soldier. As season 1 draws to a close, Shadow plays Moonlight Sonata and mutters that the hour of awakening is slowly approaching, and this brings the Eminence in Shadow Part 1 to an end. If you would like to see a Part 2 when Season 2 drops very soon, then please comment Part 2 down below in the comment section, and please don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel if you enjoy anime recaps, as Anik posts all the best anime recap videos. As always, as a friendly reminder to turn on the notification bell, so you never miss out on another video when it drops, and until next time guys, take care.